Patreon has been a wild ride in 2024. We've seen an increased crackdown on various flavors and have also seen a number of high-profile games and projects entirely banned from the platform, all while Patreon continues to struggle compared to its explosive growth from 2020 to 2022. So, how has this impacted the top 10 gaming Patreons so far this year, and what should we expect to see by the end of 2024? So, today we are going to go over the top gaming Patreons, and we're going to start from 10 and go down from 1 because,
it's probably still accurate even if you take adult out of it because...
I know.
Who puts a game just on Patreon?
I don't know. I think a lot of people have games on Patreon. I don't know. Like indie developers. I feel like indie developers would have Patreon.
Artists do.
An artist,
but there's so many platforms that will tolerate and use non-adult content that I think that your options are very limited in the adult space compared to elsewhere. So, but yeah, there was one point where your number one Patreon was the top Patreon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's still in the top 10, but
like the top 10 overall.
Yeah, top 10 overall.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it is looking more and more like Patreon is trying to move away from adult content and go completely, safe for work.
Yeah.
And it seems like as the flavors are being...
Yeah, they're just like, oh, you had your fun, but
you help us build our platform. Yeah. Now we're going to get rid of you.
We don't really need you anymore. Thank you for the growth.
Didn't Tumblr do the same thing?
I'm sure. I actually wasn't in the Tumblr scene.
You're too young for that?
No, I was the age for it. I just didn't go for it.
Because you liked all of those Cartoon Network shows that came out of Tumblr.
Yeah, and
like Steven Universe and all the other totally quality animation.
Whatever. Yeah, they all look. What was the meme where they were all coming from like SoCal or something? Or no, Cal Arts. Cal Arts. They're just like they had the Cal Arts art style.
It was people from Tumblr got hired and then they were hiring their friends from Tumblr.
Adventure Time was like that. Yeah, and I really liked that show.
I am aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So
let's
number
get back.
10.
Yeah, number 10. Okay, so at number 10 we have Adeptus Steve, who is creating Wildlife.
This game was at one point. This game was probably making more money than Summertime Saga was, and
because how good of a game it was.
It still is. It is no longer at that point.
No, it's not. It's really sad.
It's still making over $1 million a year, but it is...
it's slowly been decreasing. Like, it was 9th place in 2023, and then 7th place in 2022, so...
And now it's in 10th place.
And now it's in 10th place, so it's slowly decreasing in patrons. Just really sad.
Because I know you like this game.
Yeah, I covered it... Well, the last time I talked about it was... in the new Steam spring video that I did 2 months ago. And that's when I talked about how it was temporarily suspended off of Patreon.
Yeah.
And along with Project Helius, which I'll get to.
Yeah, I think Patreon is trying to, as it is removing flavors, it's obvious that they're not getting rid of furry yet.
Yeah.
But they're trying to find a way to get rid of the more animalistic things.
Yeah.
And eventually get rid of furry.
Yeah. Well, they'll move to it.
They'll move
eventually.
to putting the poor foxkin to death at the time. But it's just interesting seeing them try to define
what furry is and
what's acceptable and not acceptable. And you were telling me how they didn't know the difference between sentient and sapient.
Yeah.
For which was just so I guess it's okay, but it's like, don't you guys have like lawyers and stuff that you pay money to like
you would think
read your policies?
Yeah, you would think that was the case.
Maybe they were part of the big layoffs and you can post all the layoffs the Patreon has had. Oh man.
But yeah, Wildlife is one of the games that I really see the potential for. I mean, it is taking a long time, but like I think they had to completely restart the open world map back in 2021, or the world map that was in 2021. The first version that I played is different than the one now, and so they completely had to redo it.
And was this one of the games that did the Unreal upgrade?
Yeah, most games that were Unreal 4 switched to Unreal 5, and you've seen a lot of that in our space.
And I think the biggest advantage that Wildlife has is Wildlife has made all of these sexual animation assets.
Yeah.
With all of these different characters and all of these different permutations and combinations. And I think that we see in these Unreal games, we see a lot of reused assets. We see a lot of sameness and similar things. But those animations, which there are thousands of.
Yeah. I talked in my recent video, like the one that I covered the game, and they have like over 1,000 sexual interactions with around like 50 different characters, which is insane.
So, I mean, building from that, I think that if you can get some type of game that's fun, with some type of quest system, with some type of something to...
Yeah, right now it's very focused on the sandbox editor, which is fine because I think they created the sandbox editor for development purposes and kind of just put it out into the public, and they were just like, you can do this now. But I think it's really for them to help create the game faster.
Or they're just going to be the Bethesda and expect, fans to finish and make the game.
Oh God, I
themselves.
hope not. Oh my gosh. I really hope not. Because it's a really big game and I see the potential for it. But one of my worries is that the story that they created hasn't really gone anywhere. Like, it's the same story that was there when I first played it back in 2021. You crash land, there's like this beast party with the rest of the humans, you have a few quests, you have a few sex scenes, and that's it. And
so we'll just have to see where it goes.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
And hopefully it won't, this slide will stop, but
I really hope so. We'll just have to see for next year if they're at number 10 or lower or higher. I hope higher.
And number 9 is new to the list, right?
Yeah, number 9, we pushed out from 2023. Breeders of Nephilim was at number 10.
And they had a big fall to like 15 or something you got ranked at.
Yeah, they fell pretty hard.
I know at the end of last year, you said that the top 10 were flat from a growth standpoint.
Yeah.
Are you going to talk about where it is this year or what the projection is so far?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah. But so for number 9, we have OppaiMan, who is creating Fresh Women and Forbidden Fantasies. But for this portion, I'm just going to talk about Fresh Women because they actually created a new Patreon for Forbidden Fantasies. Like an entirely new Patreon.
When they do that?
When they, a few weeks ago. I think back in June.
They just did it. Okay.
Yeah, back in June.
So while you were out of town.
Yeah, they created a new one. And it's actually going to be in my top new Patreons for 2024 so far podcast.
Wow, it's only been a couple weeks and it's already...
Yeah, it has I think it's edging 2000s.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to talk about Forbidden Fantasies on the next one.
Spoilers.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about Fresh Women.
Okay.
So this is the one that has the weird naming convention. So right now we're on Season 2, Episode 3, Part 1, and they eventually are going to do Part 2. But I've only played Season 2, Episode 3, Part 1. And I last talked about this game in the Game of the Year predictions for 2024 video. And in that I talked about how if we could see it on Steam this year. And I say on their Steam page it does say 2024. I do think it still has a chance to come out on 2024. Most likely I would say Q4 2024 or at the end. And I guess I could also see it coming out 2025, early 2025. But we'll just have to see.
I think it really depends on how many episodes they're going to put in
Yeah.
to that early access release.
Yeah.
And
I mean, can I talk about, like, would it be spoiler-ish if I talked about the season?
I think because
it
people on
is
Steam
different.
haven't played it yet.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I think the big question is, will this be a DLC? Will this be a standalone
It is a
game?
DLC.
It's a
yeah.
DLC?
On the Steam page, it does classify it as a DLC.
Can you do early access on a DLC, or does it have to be finished?
Oh, I don't know.
So
I would have to check.
yeah, because
Because
I think that's
yeah.
gonna be a real issue.
I think DLCs have to be, like, completely finished
I don't know.
to work
It just
as
seems,
a DLC.
I don't know. I mean, I think the Love and Sex Second Base DLC is not finished. So
Oh, the Bree story one?
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how much content they have by the end of the year, and will they release that? Because this is one of your top 10 that is still growing, that is still moving. And it'll be interesting to see how Forbidden Fantasies does on its own as a separate entity from Fresh Women.
Yeah. I mean, so far, Forbidden Fantasy. Well, it's doing well, but I'm not going to talk too much about it.
You talked about how they were using Blender.
Yeah. So season 1 and season 2 are different renders. So in season 2, they do use Blender, and they use a different character rig. And so the animations and the whole vibe of season 2 is different than season 1. And it was really noticeable for me. I do think that the quality has improved in some aspects, like the backgrounds and all of the shots for characters are really nice. Like, they're very cinematic looking, which I appreciated. It kind of reminded me of Forbidden Fantasies and how, those shots are very cinematic looking. Like, they look like pictures taken from an animation studio.
So this is a situation where they made all the money, and they seem to be reinvesting that in their ability to make better product, which is great.
Yeah, it just means that, the quality has increased, but the quantity has decreased, which makes sense. They're spending all the time making quality work, so it's going to take a while.
It's going to take longer.
So, I mean, I understand that, so that's fine.
And number 8, you have another furry game.
I have Heat, Anthro Heat, or Heat is the Patreon title, and then
they're calling it Anthro Heat. So they're trying to make it clear to Patreon, hey, these are the furries that you should ban last. You know, when you have 5 flavors left on the platform, please let what furry be one of those.
Yeah, pretty much.
We promise to make this VR game as anthropomorphic as possible. Look at the hands.
Yeah, you can, in this update, you can actually move their hands and their fingers, which I thought that was so interesting, like to move your fingers and hands, and you can also change their clothes. They actually created it, they updated this tab section that you can open up for each character.
That's good they have clothes now, because one of your complaints about furry games is that they're always naked.
Yeah, so that was nice. But the ones that don't have clothes are the robots, which I guess makes sense because, they're robots.
I know, seriously. Do you expect Optimus Prime to wear pants?
Exactly. That would be really weird. Or him in like a suit.
He's going to a fancy ball. Can Optimus Prime dance?
I think he would. It would just be very clunky and loud, very loud. But so what else was new about this game? Well, there are new robot characters, both a male and a female. And then 2 other characters, Sasha and Jasper. And I don't remember which animals right now off the top of my head they were supposed to be.
You'll show it in an image.
Yeah. They also have a new location, which is like this cozy, stormy cabin in the woods situation.
For your horror movie.
Yeah. I guess. It was very nice, though.
It always starts nice.
And
then the robot serial killer shows up and it's all over.
Yeah, wasn't there a movie called Cabin in the Woods? Yeah, that was scary. Didn't it have Thor in it? Like,
I know it was like Joss Whedon.
I don't know who that is.
Yes,
well, okay, I would have to look at a picture. I'm not good at names.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He did the Avengers.
Oh, you mean like the director?
Yes, and then he got canceled for something.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Life's hard.
But for this one, I think the biggest update that they had, or what I felt was the biggest update, was that they added a new flavor, and it was the vor flavor. And so...
Oh, so that's what's going to happen in the cabin in the woods. You're going to be eaten.
yeah, just in the cabin.
We're inviting you over for dinner.
But for this one, you can actually be in the act of being swallowed, and then like you shrink down and you're swallowed. Shut up! And you're swallowed, and you go down into their stomach, and you kind of just walk around, which was kind of funny. And then you have like the stomach noises and all that. You know, the vor flavor.
That is. So okay,
no shaming.
I'm not shaming. I'm just noticing that is that what's happening?
I'm noticing that. I don't think I've ever explained it. Is the
furry community being cannibalized by the vor community? Are they being devoured from within?
Devoured? Oh, Jesus. That sounds painful. But yeah, I think that was the biggest change that I saw. Mm-hmm. It's also releasing on Steam, which is nice.
Yeah, I was surprised by the number of vor games that are on Steam.
Well, I don't think it's going to classify itself as a vor game. It's just one of those, is one of the actions that you can do with the characters. As a part of like this whole array of things that you can do.
You'll call it like flavor mastication or something.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. But on the Steam page, it doesn't have a release date yet. It's the to be announced right now. But it is on there, so that's hopeful.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And number 7, you just covered the new game with number 7.
Yeah, number 7 is NLT, Symphony of the Serpent. And yeah, the first build just came out, and I covered it a few weeks ago. So if you want a more in-depth talk of me talking about that, you should go watch that. Of course, after listening to this. But
I thought it was interesting, when you talked about Symphony of the Serpent, one of the pushbacks you got in the comments were people who agreed with you about Treasure of Nadia probably being a better game than Genesis Order, and then you had people disagreeing with you. And what I thought was interesting, if you look at the data, NLT is down over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it was 4th in 2022, and then 5th in 2023, and now it's 7th.
Yeah, so I think that the the people on Patreon seem to have liked Treasure of Nadia more than they seem to have liked the Genesis Order. So,
yeah, and you can really tell that by their Steam sales, especially.
Yeah, and it's reviews. It's much higher for Treasure of Nadia, both in the percentage as well as just the number of reviews.
Yeah.
So, and Treasure of Nadia, the space, the space was smaller. So that you would expect the Genesis Order to have more reviews since there's so many more people playing.
Yeah, but especially after the huge success of Treasure of Nadia.
But for whatever reason, and you go into detail on the reason, it's just less popular, and because you had people atting you about that.
Yeah, if you want to hear about the Genesis Order, I also have a video on that.
That video confused people. that.
Yeah, I was. What was it? It was the Star Field. Yeah, it was.
You were sleep deprived.
I was sleep deprived from playing Starfield.
What was it? You was like in the same week you played that. You played Starfield and you played Honeycomb.
Oh yeah, Honeycomb.
And you were like a zombie.
Yeah, because they were like 3 huge games back to back, and I was like.
They were supposed to be 3 huge games.
Well. Yeah.
Reality turned out differently. And I think that I do think that Symphony of the Serpent does have the ability to be a better game than the Genesis Order. I
think so too. This was I liked the first build. I thought it showed a lot of promise, especially as a first build.
Yeah.
I thought it had a lot of promise.
And I know you really like the move to the isometric.
Yeah. I like isometric games, I think, in general. So it was nice to play like a Treasure of Nadia, Genesis Order type game as the isometric.
Okay.
I thought that was really nice. And I also really liked the combat. I liked how you could use things around like the battlefield, and like you could jump on things,
use objects.
Yeah, use objects. I don't know what it was. Maybe
and
a
he
trampoline.
did say he's already planning on revamping the combat because he's had a lot of feedback so far. So it'll be interesting to see what the final product is. Remember, we're talking about a game that's not coming out for years. So
yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what will happen with NLT because since we're far away from a new release, will the number of subscribers continue to drop, the number of patrons continue to drop over the next year, or will we see stabilization and growth again? So
I really hope Symphony of the Serpent is going to turn things around.
Because even if the Symphony of the Serpent is an amazing game, given how early it is in development, it is not unreasonable to say NLT should expect another 6 months, 8 months of decline before that number starts to turn around again. Now, my worry is game's out, decline continues, and NLT panics thinking that this decline has something to do with the Symphony of the Serpent as opposed to it just being a natural progression.
Yeah.
And that's what people do because it's hard to...
Yeah, it's hard to differentiate that. Yeah.
So we'll just have to see. So I guess don't panic, NLT.
Yeah, don't panic. It's okay.
Now, speaking
Continue
of
playing your game.
people that are allowed to panic, number 6.
Oh, okay, yeah. So number 6 is Dr.PinkCake being a dick. It's been one of those Patrons where it hasn't really shown any real growth over the past 3 years, which really sucks for them.
They're still making good money though, so let's not.
Okay, that's true. They're still making good
Dr.
money.
PinkCake is not hurting for money, okay? So let's keep this real.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I remember in 2021, I was covering this game and how it was the top of every list.
And everyone was talking about it.
Everyone was talking about it. Being a dick, being a dick, being a dick. And it was everywhere. And people were comparing it to everything. And now it's kind of just slowly fallen off.
Well,
but
I think it's still successful. I think that
that's true.
The output has declined. And you've talked about how there's been a creep in the output.
Yeah.
Each build has been a little bit longer than the last build from how it took. So I think that...
But I mean, if you compare like the episodes from today from 2021, there is a jump in quality.
There's no question that there's
a jump in quality.
Yeah, we have just, the assets are better.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's taking so long.
I think it's also
one of the reasons.
I think it's also that we were all trapped at home during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And Being a Dick came out at the right time.
That's true.
And
they did.
That really resonated with people. And just, you were talking about how Patreon had its big growth between 2020 and 2022. It's the same thing. People were stuck at home. People weren't able to go out and spend money on things, so they spent money on Patreon.
Yeah, plus they were all, I'm not going to say they were all depressed.
Listen, would you have started this channel if it wasn't for COVID?
No, because COVID stopped everything for everybody, and you were just including me.
Yeah, and you were like, I need to do something else.
Yeah, working at Target is hard. Working at Target is hard during Christmas, okay? That drains you.
Yes. You're like,
especially Christmas during COVID. Everyone was crazy. It was insane.
It was just funny. You came home one day and you're like, I don't care what I have to do. I never want to work at Target ever again.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, all right, I can't do it anymore.
I'm just trying to help you brainstorm all sorts of ideas. And
yeah,
you came up with this one and I was like,
oh.
If your mom says it's okay.
Yeah.
And then
she said yes.
Dirty betrayer. She's like, oh, that's a great idea. And I'm like, what? And that's how I got here. What is it, the record scratch? If you wonder how I got here.
Ugh, gross.
Showing my age again.
Yeah.
But what are we talking about?
I don't even know anymore.
Being a Dick, season 3.
Yeah, season 3. So season 3, it's probably not going to be on Steam for a while. The episodes are probably going to be episodes 9 through 12, including the interlude.
And he's working on 11 right now?
Yeah, right now he's working on 11. So, he still has 2 more to go. And each episode takes, I don't know, around a year to
But they
make.
didn't used to take that long. So
I know.
So what do you think? Next spring? Next summer?
I don't know. Maybe next summer.
Wow. All right. And
yeah.
number 5 is like the up-and-comer.
Yes, the up-and-comers. So number 5 is DotArt creating Whole House. And they're actually relatively new. They launched in 2020, but they only really started picking up patrons by around 2022. And then at the beginning of 2023, that's when they really started to skyrocket.
And this is just like a parody sex game, right?
Yeah. It's a you manage a house, and you have characters from across the dimensions, I guess, where you have like Princess Peach, you have Raven, Velma, Zelda, Samus, Android 18, all of those characters. He keeps adding more.
So when the guy brought up at the Nintendo shareholder conference, he was worried about.
Yeah, he was worried about.
He was talking
Whole
about
House.
this game specifically.
Yeah. He was really worried. He's like, oh my gosh, people really like this.
The 11 second base guy, Andre, he was talking about how he was at a convention. He was right across from Nintendo.
Oh.
And I guess one of his characters has the Bowsette costume that she wears.
Oh,
and I'm like, that would have been so cool.
I think Brie would warn that,
yes,
right?
Yeah,
because she likes video games.
Yes.
Yeah, she was the video game nerd. They were all very stereotypical, which is nice.
Dude, when you have a harem game,
look,
it's all
listen,
archetypes.
I'm not. Yeah, it's fine.
It's like when you read a manga; they all have a different hair color. They all have a different, archetype. It's like, oh, you're studious, so we're gonna give you blue hair.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
with
that amount of characters, it's probably easier to make them stereotypical.
Yeah.
But Whole House. So they just had a build release, but that build was only for the patrons. And I'm going to get into how Whole House is very Patreon focused in their game. I think the biggest reason why their Patreon is growing so much is because people really like this game. But in the game, you have to pay for Patreon to get certain things.
Okay.
And like certain characters you can't get unless you're subscribed to their Patreon.
I think one of your games,
certain sex scenes,
one of your
like
top
that.
new games from last year was like that isekai game.
Oh, right, Isekai Awakening and The Legend of the Night City, something like that.
And I think you had to log in to be able to access more stuff. So.
Oh yeah, right.
So I think that's going to be a more common feature that they add, as well as AI art. I know you're going to talk about that in the next podcast. We didn't mention Symphony of the Serpent. I think that's the first game I've seen in the top 10 that used AI art.
Yeah, I did not mention that in my review because I don't know. It just maybe it was a placeholder.
Well, I don't know. It was just interesting because it was like cookbooks.
Yeah, it was really weird. Yeah, it was like dieting with Jesus or something. And it was all AI art, or like how to lose weight really fast.
I would think dieting with Jesus is a bad idea because you can just make more food.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Maybe they were
loaves and the
maybe
fishes.
they were thinking, just bread and fish.
But I guess,
and I guess wine. And like those are your 3 main things.
That's all you needed in the Levant.
Exactly.
Back then.
And you know how skinny they were back then.
Yes,
malnourished.
Up until the 20th century, starvation was the number 1 killer of humans.
Yeah.
Every century up until, and then it was other humans. So
Whoa. Yeah.
We got more food, and then we found other things to do.
Like kill each other.
Anyways,
Whole House, yeah. So, like I was saying, like you have to subscribe to their Patreon to get certain things in the game, and I think that's why their Patreon is growing so fast.
And from what you were telling me, is this isn't really about story. This is just about the sexual interactions and the customization. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The customization is actually insane in this game, especially if you pay for it. Like for the sex scenes, you can change how they look at you. You can change their boob size. You can change their position. You can change if they're pregnant or not. And it's with each character. And you can change a bunch of other things. I'm missing out on a lot, but these are just from the top of my head.
All right. And at number 4, a game that you seem to get grief every time you talk about.
Oh, yes. So Project 4 is... Wait, what?
Project 4.
Number 4 is Project Helius, Operation Lovecraft Fallen
Number
Doll.
project.
Number project, Helius 4. So, yeah, I've talked about this project, Helius.
For years.
Yeah, for years. It's because it's always been on one of the top lists.
And it had a Steam beta. I think we talked about that when that came out.
Yeah.
But that's also closed to patrons only.
Yeah, it's a closed beta. So only the patrons can get to it.
I think that's another interesting way that developers have found to bolster their patron numbers by using Steam.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they haven't really updated the demo that's on Steam either. And yeah, everything is going into that closed beta. So I can't really talk about this game that much.
You did talk about how they have over 1 million wish lists on Steam.
That's true. That came about in April of this year.
Which that's a huge number.
It really is. They're now like number 29 on Steam's top wish listed games, which is actually insane that it's that high.
To be fair, with Lovecraftian things, you are supposed to go insane. So.
That's true.
So.
Okay, that's true. Yeah. But they are also a game that was made on Unreal 4 and they upgraded to Unreal 5.
Maybe. It depends if you're playing it or not.
Well, I guess in the announcement, that's what they said. They said that they had upgraded the game to Unreal 5.
Now, I know that you have played this, but
I've played like the harem mode or whatever.
But you don't talk about games that you don't do reviews of games that don't have
a public build.
A public build or a way to access it on Steam.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's not easily accessible, I don't cover it.
It's fair. But and I know that you have gotten pushback for covering this game because there has been some controversy around it.
Yeah. I mean, there has been controversy around it, but it's still a very successful project on Patreon that has a huge following on Steam. And if and when that changes, I will be happy to talk about it. But until then, I am going to continue to focus on the facts and the data.
That is a very
safe answer.
Robot answer you just gave there.
Yeah.
What do they call it, being an NPC?
Yeah, that was a very NPC answer. Yeah, it was. Because, facts and data.
I get it. And you don't want to get... I think one of the problems is I've seen this. People come to you with like, oh, this is going on or that's going on. And your first question to them is basically...
What evidence?
And they're just like, well, he talked about it. And like, okay, what was his evidence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we'll see that. We'll see somebody will cover something online and then people will cover the person without actually seeing if whatever that person talked about in the first place was... Yeah.
And it's just like a react video where like the original video gets smaller and smaller. Like you have the person talking about each video. It's just stupid. All the Asmongold effect.
It's okay. I want to see Asmongold do musical TikToks with cats.
Oh, wow. He would never do that. He would do it with the roaches.
The roaches can sing along as a chorus?
Yeah, on his shoulders. He'll have his arms spread out, and there's just a row of cockroaches on it.
I think there was a series back in the day called Joe's Apartment. You can look it up, and he has, like, musical cockroaches that live in his house.
What?
You can look it up. I'm telling you. You'll be horrified.
Okay. All right, so our next one is TurboDriver Wicked Whims at number 3. So this one's interesting.
How old is The Sims 4?
I think it came out in 2014.
So the number 3 Patreon is a mod
for a game that came out 10 years ago.
Oh my god.
Yes, okay. You are correct.
Right.
It is insane. But it makes money. So Wicked Whims, it's really one of those things that keeps being added and upgraded to. Like for this year, the TurboDriver has added things like bumping and grinding in nightclubs. Shut up. New STDs. New STDs.
What everybody wants in their game. Oh man, we got all the best STDs.
Yeah. Love and support, panty mods, those kinds of things. But the biggest news out of Wicked Whims, or out of TurboDriver, sorry, is that they created a website called Wicked CC, and that's where they hired a bunch of creators to come on and create mods for The Sims. For Wicked Whims.
So they're integrating other mods into this mod, and that's why they're making so much money.
And it has like 30-ish creators, and they add and improve like mods for furniture, clothing, accessories, all that stuff.
And this makes sense, because if you look at how much money you have to spend to have every version of Sims 4, every expansion, every upgrade.
They have a lot of expansion.
I know you don't have all of them.
No, I do not. I didn't really get into The Sims.
Yeah, I know. When it was crazy. You've played the mods, but but those people spend a ton of money. So paying for a Patreon to give you the kind of support that EA is just never going to give. And
you're right.
And
you're right.
I think that it's unfortunate, because why do people like The Sims? People like The Sims because there's this degree of realism. You were talking about that The Sims was the only game you could think of where, having to use the bathroom.
Oh yeah, the bathroom,
And people want a degree of realism, and that degree of realism, they want the option to have it. And EA is never going to give them the procreation aspects that they want. So this leaves an opening for entrepreneurial mods.
It makes a ton of sense why this is so popular, why this is number 3. And especially, I've been thinking about this, how The Sims or Wicked Whims would be a great game for women, like an adult game for women.
I think they're the ones funding this and playing it, because if you look at the people playing The Sims, The Sims is disproportionately women.
Yeah.
And
it should have been on my
I've watched Sims
adult games for women video.
I've watched Sims YouTube creators, and they will use this. But it's funny how they talk about it. You know how you talk about how there's sometimes a lack of authenticity in how people talk about this. So the creators will be like, oh, I turn off most of the sexual things, but I really like the relationship stuff they do. And that's fine. And I'm not trying to tell people how they should play the mod. And being able to pick and choose how you want to play the game, that's why it's so popular. It's not just about drowning people in swimming pools anymore.
Yeah. I used to watch this girl who did like the 100 baby challenge.
What the hell is the 100?
The 100 baby challenge.
You have 100 babies?
You have 100 babies.
How do you not die of old age?
You do die, and you hand it over to your firstborn.
Okay.
I think that's how it went. But I think it's the first girl that's born.
First girl that's born. Is it 100 generations, or you can have multiple babies in
Actually, I think it's 100. No, you can have multiple babies. You just pop out as many babies as she can before she dies. And then, like the first one, and then the oldest
What it was like to be a woman in the olden days. Pop out as many babies as you can before you die. Thank you.
Look, it was entertaining when I was, like, in my senior year of high school.
You are only allowed to say that because you're female.
I know.
I said something like that.
I know.
Oh, my God.
I know.
Oh, wow. Okay, the 100 baby challenge. Sounds like a nightmare. Oh, man.
Now that I think about it.
Well, no, it's whatever. It's I'm really trying hard not to shame right now. I'm at the threshold. I'm struggling with it.
All right, let's move to number 2
Moving to number 2.
Okay.
And another game that has had cancellation issues.
Yeah. So number 2, we have Meshed VR, who is creating Vertimate.
Or Vertimate 2.
I was going to get to that. Don't spoil it.
Oh, sorry, spoilers.
Yeah. So Vertimate, I made a video in December of 2022 when it had
canceled.
No, stop it. I was creating a video, and then it got canceled and it got banned off of Steam.
You had to redo the review.
Yeah, so I did have to change a few things in that review and say like, oh, this is not on Steam anymore, but I'm still going to cover it.
So in your defense, because you don't accept keys or builds or anything.
Yes, I was waiting for the Steam release, because the Steam release is usually very like a big moment.
And you buy it and then you play it.
Yeah.
And that can hurt you sometimes. Like
yes.
like Starfield.
Yeah.
You could have had a copy of Starfield weeks before the release.
Yeah,
and
but I
that's
don't
why
take
when the
keys.
game came out, everybody had those Starfield videos out right away, and your Starfield video came out like a week later.
Yeah.
And so you are at a disadvantage because you don't take these things.
Yeah, because I just feel disingenuous if I take it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, because they're just like, oh, we'll pay you to say good things about the game.
Well,
and I know you don't have to say good things
Yeah.
about the game, but I want it to be as authentic as I can.
And
so,
depending on the country, there are some legal issues
also
because
that.
the value of a game is tangible value depending on, once again, the country, and you're being given that.
Yeah, like on Steam reviews, like if
It has.
if it has like the product was received for free,
Yeah.
like I don't really
You don't
look
trust
at
it as
those.
much.
Yeah, I know.
And it's in the grand scheme of things, it is not a significant amount of money to show the integrity to pay for it, and that's totally cool. But you did get screwed on Starfield because of that.
That yeah, I know.
So you had this Vertimate review.
Yeah.
It got banned.
It got banned off of Steam. It's still banned off of Steam.
Yeah, well, because there's only one game they've ever brought back. It was that what was it, Chaos Child.
Yeah. But so Vertimate is still off, and they are actually now working on Vertimate 2.
Which is a smart plan, because if you want to get back on Steam,
Just create a different game.
I don't know how they're going to be able to do it though, because
I don't
whole premise of Vertimate is
the creativity.
the
customization
and and what you can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you can make a game like that that's going to be compliant with Steam's policies.
I don't know either. I mean,
I think what
Honey Select is on there.
but Honey Select is a highly redacted version.
That's true.
And the level of modification that Vertimate gives you is much more extensive. I think you would have to make a limited version on Steam and then have to create a patch to allow you to do more with it. And because Steam has rules about you can't include prohibited assets or anything else like that, you can't just lock it. You have to actually not have the assets in it. I have no idea how you would make a game like that. I just don't know how it's going to pass Steam's policies because of how customizable it is.
Yeah,
but
and
that's not our problem.
Yeah, they've talked about how on Vertimate 2, it's going to be a new engine. It's going to have better performance and more tools for creators.
I know you had issues with the performance when you were crafting like a house or something.
Oh, well, it was just really overwhelming. Like creating a house, creating like an environment. The environments that I did use, they were already pre-made because I didn't want to make an environment. I was like, that's too much work. And I mean, I've worked with Blender, 3ds Max, CAD, Maya, a ton of others, and this tool, like Vertimate, was so hard to use. It took me I think a good 2 hours to just figure out what I was doing. So I'm hoping that Vertimate 2 is going to be much more simplistic.
Maybe less of a learning curve.
Yeah, or have maybe better tutorials on how to do things. So, here's hoping for the best.
Well, I mean, there's a very strong and passionate community, so...
Oh, yeah, the mods for
I think
Vertimate is insane.
I think that if they can find a way to get onto Steam, I think they can make millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
It's just finding a way to get onto Steam.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see. And
the number one, to no one's surprise.
Yes, to no one's surprise, it is Dark Cookie making Summertime Saga again. So I say again because the most recent update is him just redoing the entire game, which is a move. It's honestly a smart move. So I can't kick him for that.
I feel the need to defend Dark Cookie.
You don't need to. I like his game. I like Summertime Saga. Making a whole new game, making it better performance, better UI, new art, new locations, making it like it was that small little box. Now it's a whole window. I understand what he's doing, and it's a smart move. So
we,
from a business perspective,
we see at the top of this list, we see a lot of developers that are taking more than a year for builds.
Yeah. Yes.
And so it's not just Dark Cookie that's doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
We're seeing multiple developers that have moved from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Dark Cookie is doing his own version of a tech update.
It would be an entirely different story if he was losing patrons.
Well,
but he's not.
He has lost some patrons.
Well, okay, fine, that's true. But he's still
he
in
got
first
most
place.
of them back with the new build.
Yeah, that's true.
But the big deal is they're streaming multiple times a week, drawing the art.
Yeah,
so,
on Picarto.
So they are communicating with their community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're not hearing anything for 6 months or 10 months or 12 months.
Yeah, like a lot of developers do.
Like a lot of developers do. So I know it's easy to look at the Patreon space and talk about how bad the roadmaps are and how bad the communication is and how people are milking games. When you reviewed Milky City on Steam.
Milky City. Sorry.
Milking City.
Milky City.
When you revealed Milky City on Steam, you were kind of harsh. Well, at least harsh for you.
Yes, that's true.
And I don't think that that's what's going on with Summertime Saga. I think
don't think so either.
This is a developer who is truly passionate about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They're communicating with their audience. They are showing up and communicating with the audience. And I think that it's easy to look at who's on top and castigate and make fun of and be like, why aren't you so much better? But I think that they have made a game that resonates with the community in a way that no other game has. Mm-hmm. I mean, they literally have double the patrons of the next
our
number two.
Yeah.
And that's not a new phenomenon.
No.
And I think that there are a lot of developers on Patreon that seem to think that if Summertime Saga was gone tomorrow, all of those patrons would migrate to other projects.
No, and that's not the case.
I just don't see the evidence for that. I see that they have created something that people find to be special and meaningful and unique, and that's why they're still contributing, and that's why they're still wanting to be a part of that. So what do you think we can expect to see by the end of the year? It sounds like about half of these games are going to get builds.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah. I mean, I don't know about Dark Cookie's update schedule. He does have he said in his latest Patreon post that he would have updates every 2 months, but they're not build updates. They're just
builds.
They're just updates. They're just updates on
where we are.
Update of the build or something.
An announcement of an announcement.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know how he's going to do with consistent updates on the game of builds. And then for other things, Vertimate, we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Nothing clear.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens with Vertimate 2.
Wicked Whims gets new stuff, but it doesn't get builds. It's just new parts and it's patches and it's...
Yeah, it's not really builds. Yeah, it's just patches and updates.
And Operation Lovecraft, sign up for the Patreon. Maybe you'll see something, but otherwise...
Yeah.
DotArt,
actually, yeah, he has updates a ton. Mm-hmm. So I am expecting a ton of updates and for the rest of the year from Whole House.
Dr.PinkCake, probably next year.
Yeah, maybe next year, maybe at the end of the year, maybe December.
And NLT puts out 2 builds a month.
Yeah,
pretty consistently.
Yeah, and you just had the first build, so
I think the second build just came out too.
Oh.
And then Heat, I know nothing about Heat. What are you seeing build-wise with them?
They're decent with builds.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of, little updates, little fixes, little improvements along the way. And I think they're going to, since there's a Steam page, I'm thinking that they're going to be working on that a lot.
How? Okay. Yeah,
I don't know how, but I think that's going to take time.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then you said with Fresh Women, probably the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many episodes are going to be in season 2, but each episode has about 3 parts. So we'll at least get season 2, episode 3, part 3 at some point this year.
And wildlife, you can do the demo on Steam, but if you want to see new stuff, you got to go to Patreon.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so it sounds like, do you expect to see any more motion in the rankings?
Motion in the ocean? No. Not really any big waves.
Okay.
Everything's pretty close to the same as last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, DotArt is probably the biggest change. But yeah.
All right.
We are starting to see positive growth again in the top gaming patrons, where 2023 was pretty stagnant. I'm excited to see increased production from these patrons that have struggled to get builds out, so I think that 2024 will end up with modest growth overall. As for 2025, we'll just have to wait and see. I think that we'll continue to see more and more high-profile games removed as Patreon continues to move away from adult content. What does that mean for our industry? Unfortunately, I have no idea. If you enjoyed this episode of Shame Free Gaming, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, my Patreon, and my Discord, and I will see you next time.